She arrived quietly on Christmas Eve as a mail-order bride, but her hidden talents would save the ranch, and the man who thought he needed her only for company. The snow fell softly over the ranch on Christmas Eve, covering the wooden fences and the frozen ground in a white blanket that made the world feel quiet and still. The rancher stood near the gate watching for the carriage that was promised since autumn, a mail-order bride whose arrival he had anticipated with a mix of hope and hesitation. He had imagined many things about her, perhaps a shy young woman with kind eyes or someone practical ready to help with the work of the land, but he had also feared disappointment as the winter wind bit through his coat and the horses stamped their hooves waiting for warmth. The carriage wheels crunched over the snow and he felt his chest tighten with a nervous excitement. The townsfolk had whispered that mail-order brides were often unprepared for the harsh realities of frontier life, and he had braced himself for someone delicate or timid. Yet when the driver lifted the curtain and she stepped down, he was immediately aware that she was different from anything he had pictured. She moved with quiet confidence and her eyes scanned the ranch not with fear but with curiosity and intelligence. She greeted him politely and her voice carried warmth that cut through the chill, making him feel as though the cold air itself had softened around them. The kettle shifted in the pen, the fences sagged under the weight of snow, and the barn roof showed signs of wear, but the rancher did not notice these details at first because the presence of the young woman drew his full attention. He welcomed her into the small cabin that served as both home and office, explaining the sparse accommodations and the harsh realities of ranch life. She nodded with understanding and smiled encouragingly but made no promises beyond what she could manage. Her hands were already dusted with the snow from helping unload the few belongings she had brought, and the rancher felt a mix of admiration and relief seeing her practical approach to the work that awaited. She did not speak of talent or experience, but the way she moved and observed suggested there was more beneath the surface than he could yet see. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the fire crackled in the hearth, bringing a small comfort to the room that felt unusually bright with her presence. He realized that the ranch had been lonely not only for him but for the work and the life that should have filled it, and he sensed that this arrival was the beginning of something different, even if he did not know how significant it might become. She unpacked quietly, setting her things in a corner, making the space her own yet without disturbing the order he had established. The night stretched on and the cold seemed less harsh, the shadows less oppressive, because there was movement and attention and the promise of new energy. She spoke little at first, asking about the land and the animals and listening to his answers with interest and thoughtfulness, and he found himself talking more than he had expected, revealing worries and hopes that had long lain dormant. Waiting for a bride had been an act of necessity, but in this first encounter he felt that necessity might transform into partnership, something that could shape the ranch and his life in ways he had not imagined. The snow continued to fall and the cabin glowed with firelight and anticipation, marking the beginning of a winter that would not be ordinary. The first days after her arrival passed in a quiet rhythm of work and observation. She rose early to help feed the cattle and clean the barn, learning the routines with careful attention and surprising speed. Her hands moved skillfully with chores that might have seemed mundane but were vital to the ranch's survival. The rancher watched her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration, noting how she adjusted gates and repaired small fences without hesitation or complaint. She prepared simple but hearty meals for them both, filling the cabin with warmth and scent of fresh bread and stew that made the cold outside feel more distant. At night they sat by the fire, sharing stories of their pasts in small cautious ways, and she listened as much as she spoke, asking questions that showed insight and thoughtfulness. The rancher noticed that she did not boast of skill or experience, yet the changes she made were tangible. The animals seemed calmer in her presence and the work progressed more smoothly than it had in years. She moved through the ranch as if she understood the land not just in practicality but in rhythm and timing that he had not articulated to anyone else. Her laughter was soft but frequent, a sound that made the cabin feel less lonely and the winter less harsh. And though the townsfolk remained skeptical when they passed by the ranch or saw her in the market, her presence was altering the energy of the place gradually and invisibly. Each day revealed hints of capability beyond ordinary domestic skill, yet she did not display it in a way that drew attention or demanded praise. The rancher found himself wondering what she might do in a moment of true crisis. Though he had not voiced the thought aloud, he had expected help with chores and companionship, but he began to sense that she might bring more than that, something he could not yet name. She asked questions about the herd, about feed and fences, listening carefully to his answers and adding small suggestions that seemed practical but carried subtle ingenuity. He began to notice the way she anticipated problems before they arose, noticing weaknesses in the barn structure or the patterns of the weather that might affect the cattle. Her quiet attentiveness and adaptability made the daily grind of ranch life easier and more predictable, yet he did not press her to explain or prove herself, allowing the trust and partnership to grow naturally. The days moved with snow falling softly outside and the cabin filled with warmth inside, and slowly the rancher felt a sense of hope returning that the hard winter might be survived not by luck alone but by the presence of this capable woman beside him. They worked side by side without words, sometimes with laughter and sometimes with silence, each day revealing more about her resilience and resourcefulness, and the bond between them strengthened in ways neither had anticipated as the ranch moved steadily toward a better and more promising future. The quiet rhythm of the ranch was shattered one morning when a sudden crisis struck, threatening everything they had worked for. A section of the barn collapsed under the weight of snow and the cattle grew restless and hungry. Panic began to rise in the rancher's chest because he realized that without immediate action the winter's survival would be at risk. The bride moved quickly, assessing the situation with precision, her eyes scanning the damage and the stressed animals. Her hands moved confidently as she directed repairs and reassured the frightened livestock. She revealed knowledge of carpentry and structural repair that the rancher had never imagined and moved to implement it with skill and efficiency. Her hands worked alongside his, showing not just capability but ingenuity, finding solutions that he had not considered and improvising tools from what was available. Her confidence and calm carried them both through the crisis, allowing the barn to be repaired before any further damage occurred and the cattle to be fed and settled once more. The rancher watched in awe as she moved seamlessly from one task to the next, her hidden talent now fully revealed and the weight of relief and admiration settling over him. Her ability did not stop at practical repairs. She anticipated needs in a way that made the entire ranch function more smoothly, noticing weak spots in fences and predicting which animals would need extra care in the coming days. Her presence transformed what had felt like a fragile survival into a manageable challenge that could be overcome with planning and courage. Word of her skill spread quickly to the neighboring townsfolk who had once doubted her, and soon neighbors offered assistance and resources that had not been available before. The rancher felt a new sense of hope swelling in his chest because he realized that the woman he had expected only to keep house and offer company had become indispensable not just in labor but in judgment and strategy. Her hidden talent had saved the ranch from potential disaster, and in doing so revealed a depth of strength that inspired trust, admiration and a growing emotional bond between them. The crisis passed, leaving the barn repaired and the herd settled, and the winter no longer seemed quite so threatening. The couple worked together side by side, the rancher grateful not only for her skill but for the way her courage and ingenuity reminded him that challenges could be met with intelligence, heart and partnership. She had arrived quietly months before and now stood at the center of their shared life as more than a helper or companion. She was a force of resilience and hope whose hidden talent had changed everything for the struggling ranch and the man who called it home. The success of the barn repairs and the safety of the herd brought a new energy to the ranch, and slowly the townsfolk began to take notice of the bride's abilities. They had once whispered doubts about her presence and usefulness, yet now they offered small gestures of respect and even help with supplies or advice when she asked. Their skepticism shifted to admiration as it became clear that her hidden talents were not a fluke but consistent and reliable. The rancher felt a growing warmth toward her that went beyond gratitude. He recognized a partnership forming built on trust, respect and shared effort. Each day together strengthened their bond as they managed the routines and challenges of ranch life, from early morning chores to tending animals and repairing fences. Her laughter and calm presence eased the tension of winter, and the cabin felt alive with conversation and quiet understanding that had been missing before. The townsfolk began visiting more often, some for advice, some for conversation, and all with a growing respect for her insights and skills. The rancher found himself confiding fears and hopes that he had kept hidden even from himself, and she listened with patience and empathy, offering guidance and support without overstepping boundaries. Their evenings by the fire became moments of reflection and quiet connection, and slowly he realized that their relationship had shifted from mere necessity to something deeper, rooted in admiration and emotional closeness. The ranch itself reflected the change. The fences repaired, the barn strengthened, the cattle calmer and healthier, and the general energy of the ranch felt brighter and more resilient. The couple prepared for Christmas together, decorating their cabin modestly but with care, their shared efforts and laughter filling the cold nights with warmth. Their conversations grew lighter yet meaningful, and the rancher began to imagine a future not defined by struggle alone but by partnership, hope and even love. The bride's hidden talent had done more than save the ranch. It had transformed the way the town viewed them both and how the rancher saw himself and his life. He understood now that they were no longer simply two people managing a property. They were building something lasting together, and the Christmas season provided the perfect backdrop for this growing connection, a symbol of renewal, celebration and the promise of new beginnings shaped by courage, skill and companionship. By Christmas Day the ranch was alive with warmth and light, the barn repaired, the herd thriving and the snow outside sparkling under a clear winter sky. The townsfolk came by bearing small gifts and greetings, their earlier skepticism replaced by admiration and friendly respect. They marveled at how the ranch was functioning running so smoothly and how the bride had transformed not only the daily work but the spirit of the place. The rancher stood beside her watching the animals graze and the sun glint off the freshly repaired fences, and he felt a quiet pride swelling in his chest. He realized that the woman he had expected only to keep house and offer company had become a true partner whose skill, courage and insight had saved them all. The cabin glowed with firelight and the smell of fresh baking as they prepared a modest Christmas meal together, sharing laughter and stories and quiet glances that spoke of growing affection and understanding. The rancher acknowledged aloud the depth of her contribution, not as duty or obligation but as a gift, and she smiled modestly in response, knowing her work had mattered. The day moved slowly with a sense of peace and fulfillment that neither had expected when she first arrived. The harsh winter now softened by warmth, belonging and connection. They walked together through the snow outside the cabin, watching the landscape they had nurtured with care, and the rancher realized that the first snowflakes of Christmas had become a symbol not of cold or a struggle but of hope and new beginnings. The townsfolk lingered nearby celebrating the season, but the heart of the day belonged to them as a team, as partners, and perhaps as something more. She had arrived quietly and unassumingly months before, and now her presence defined the ranch and the life they would share. The winter that had seemed threatening now felt manageable and even joyful because they faced it together. The mail-order bride with hidden talents had arrived, and in doing so had brought survival, prosperity and the possibility of love to the struggling ranch and the man who called it home. Their first Christmas together was not only a celebration of the season but a celebration of partnership, resilience and the unspoken promise that whatever challenges lay ahead they would meet them side by side.